Hi everyone, welcome to our first set of slides for lifespan development for the summer of 2026. So we're going to get started with a little bit of an overview of what is developmental psychology and what it means for us as individuals, but also for us as researchers or in our future career, whether it's education, counseling, forensic science. There's a wide variety of career paths that you're all interested in taking. So thank you for putting that in the introductions. As we get started, I'll just reiterate, I'm Dr. Palmer without my reading glasses on. Hi, trying to thoroughly enjoy the summer and get out in the sun. And we also have a couple of steer. So I'm outside a little bit. So I get red. Love the summer. Absolutely love the summer. And I think that's because a lot of my family background, growing up in Rhode Island, we would have family visit from other states to be able to come and join the ocean and to be able to really have picnics and go to the beach. That's what we did. And so the summer was a great bit of relief for us from school, from work responsibilities. Just seemed like a really fun time. So I'm sure you have a lot of little memories too about your summers, whether it was staying in school and taking some extra classes to get ahead of the game, whether it was beach vacations, amusement park vacations. What did you do over the summer? What's your favorite season of the year, and where does that come from? That's a big question that I like to ask in this course. How do we get to be who we are? What influences? Whether it's genetic, whether it's nature and nurture, where does our love for certain things or our fear for certain things come from? This social role theory we learn from others around us, and that can include our summer and getting out and getting some sun, or maybe a fear of snakes or spiders or even the water. So in this course, we're going to really look at when these influences are prime for us to be able to take and decide if we're going to assimilate and make them our ideals as well, or if we're going to refute them and pull a 180 on what the people around us think, feel, and do. So a little bit of a detour. You'll get to see over the course of the semester that I like to do that. I like life to come in and help us learn from real world experiences, not just the slides that we're seeing here. But it's a good foundation. Okay, so let's get going and see what's coming up on our other slides. And again, this is just our intro. And we'll get deeper into genetics. We'll get deeper into each individual life stage as we go throughout the course. So what is human development? Human development is a scientific course of research that we're really looking at how people develop from prenatal development and the influence of genetics all the way through early childhood stages, adolescence, early adulthood, adulthood milestones, later adulthood, and how people are dealing with geriatric populations or being a member of a geriatric community. Also looking at the influence of the environment around us. What is our community in terms of people, but also physical space and access to healthcare, education, other resources? How are those influences changing us? Whether it's our mental and emotional approach to life and other people, or it's our physical approach to our environment and our genetic makeup. What is predetermined to be our overall range of height, of weight, of IQ? What is influenced by external factors, such as access to healthy food or nutritious food, access to education, recreational activities? So in human development, we look at several domains. These domains have evolved over time. There used to be, when the idea of human development or lifespan development first started, two domains, and that was cognitive and physical. That was it. And then over time, as more and more research was done, people really started to give some thought to how people develop. Those domains were broken down a little bit more deeply. So there's the physical development, which has been broken down into fine motor. What do I have for a pen here? So our fingers and toes are fine motor development. Eyes, being able to blink, that's a fine motor development. So very tiny muscles that are used for fine motor, but then large muscle, there's like throwing things or kicking a ball, walking. Our torso is large motor development. And so that fine and gross motor development has been broken out from physical development, just like with cognitive development. So that has been broken out into emotional and social development, as well as memory, language, mathematical skills, and reading skills. So we're breaking down those main two areas of human development, of cognition and physical development, into fine gross motor, social, emotional development. We're looking at reading, math, memory, language. We can break down development very, very specifically. So much so that in the area of social development, we're looking at pro-social behavior. We're looking at empathy, theory of mind, ideas that will come across, especially when we're looking at early childhood. So just keep that in your mind as we go forward. But for the most part, we're looking at physical, cognitive, and social development as we talk about lifespan and human development throughout this course this summer. So as I said, they've expanded. The developmental domains have expanded from 2 to, depending on which model you look at, 4, 5, 7, potentially more areas of developmental domains. Depending on which career path you're thinking about going into, you might specialize in an area of development that is maybe speech language. And then we're looking again at also fine motor, gross motor, but also social development. How are we talking and communicating with people as we go through life? And so that you'll see a lot of overlap with the different developmental domains. I come from a background of being given opportunities to explore diversity, whether it was a cultural diversity, economic diversity, gender diversity, age diversity. I grew up in a very, very open family that expected us to partake in every opportunity you can imagine, to explore, to learn, to develop an appreciation for people who might have had different beliefs than us. And it was really cool. It was really neat to be able to go places for parties that were held by different cultures. I grew up in a very French English house and family, but growing up in a very small city in Rhode Island, we had a great diversity from people who brought Portuguese cultures, people who brought Dominican Republic events and cultures into our community, and being able to share that. I credit that a lot for really giving me a sense of curiosity. Why are people doing something? What are they doing? What does it mean to them? And so being exposed to a lot of different people, cultures, events helped me to come up with my approach to life of trying to understand and not judging, and being able to allow people to express themselves in a way that I might not understand, but that I could definitely learn from, is something that I hope that my students also get. And so being able to look at the choices people make and try to understand where they are coming from instead of putting my view, my worldview on their decisions helps us both grow and learn. And so that's that intersectionality of science and curiosity and human nature and wanting to take a step back and not feel that my way is the right way or the only way. And I hope you see that with some of the assignments too. I want you to be able to express yourself in a way that works for you. The other thing that um, I'm really focusing on a lot lately is what's called the social determinant of health. And so, what in the environment can help us be our healthiest? And that, again, is going to be a different answer for each individual person. My main area of research is human animal interaction and how animals help us be better people. Pet guardianship in, I want to say, Iowa has just become an identified social determinant of health. In other words, if a person has a companion animal in their home, in their lives, that person is more likely to be healthier than someone who does not have a companion animal at their home or in their life. And so the influence and the importance of having companion animals is being seen by researchers and scientists, the medical world, a lot more robustly and a lot more realistically and empirically than it has been before. Oh, I have a cat, my blood pressure is lower. That anecdotal sounds great, and that's a premise that this research was based on. But now we're starting to see scientists, researchers do empirically based studies that can prove that having a companion animal in someone's life is likely to increase their overall health. And that's going to be physical health, cognitive health, and social health too. Always happy to talk more about that. This course is going to be a little bit more generalized, but if you want to talk with me about the influence of animals on people, shoot me an email. We'll schedule that. Developmental milestones are aspects that happen almost universally for people across culture, across geographic area, across generation. Some things that might be considered a developmental milestone: crawling, walking, talking, eating solid food, um, getting your driver's license, um, graduating high school or college. What are some of the typical developmental milestones that people have across different aspects of life? Again, geographically, generationally, getting married, having children, um, menopause, maybe reading glasses could be a developmental milestone. What is expected to happen to the majority of human beings at a particular range of age? If we say between 3 and 6 years of age, there should be some type of education happening there. If we're looking at 6 months of age, we're looking at mobility changing. Okay. So we'll go through the different developmental milestones as we go through the different age periods that this course is broken up into. So just keep that phrase in mind as we go through the course. Now, critiquing the norm. Okay, there are developmental milestones that happen for the majority of people. There's always going to be exceptions to the norm, to what's expected. This can also be seen as one example if a child is walking at a year, let's say 18 months old. A child starts walking at 18 months old. They have a sibling. That sibling might not start walking at 18 months old. That sibling might start walking at 12 months of age. because they have to keep up with that older sibling. Alternatively, a child might start talking in full sentences at 18 months old, 24 months of age. Their sibling, their younger sibling, may not start talking until later on because the first sibling is doing all the talking for them. So there's not that need to be able to talk and to have a verbal representation of what they want because they already have a language communication pattern going on. So during this course, we're also going to critique the norm. We'll talk about some ideas of how things might have changed over generational time periods to change what we know of in terms of human development and how that has happened. And you'll hear the clickiness of the dog. So I don't do retakes. I'm just going to keep going. And I hope that you'd appreciate that because this is the me you would get if you were in the classroom with me. So we'll critique the norm, and I'm very open to your ideas that might refute what our slides and our resources say. This is a dialogue that we're having in this course. I'm not here to say this is the way it is, it's the only way it is, it's the only way it's going to be. Let's learn from each other, and especially through stories and experiences. I think that's the best way to learn. So there are numerous theories of development across human development. And again, just like those developmental domains, theories are going to change based on whether it's a cognitive domain, a physical domain, a psychosocial domain. So what I want to do here is not get bogged down in all of the theories. There are multiple classes for you to take that are only focusing on the theories of human development. For this class, I want us to be able to focus on a couple that we'll see recurring throughout the different developmental life stages that we're going to talk about. And I will also highlight some of my favorites and explain to you why. And you're always welcome, again, to share your favorites and why, or what theories you think make the most sense for where we are as a race now. So some major theories of development. Jean Piaget was very much a cognitive theorist. He believed that our brains help us get through different problem-solving techniques and help us to interpret what is going on in the world, and we construct our own knowledge based on what we see and how we experience the world. A lot of his theory have been connected with the expansion of knowledge, assimilation, and accommodation has also been associated with his ideas. If we have, I'll use them because they're here, a set of glasses, and this could be a set of reading glasses, of sunglasses, but we know that they're glasses because they have the arms that fold, they have the frames, they have some sort of a lens in them. So in general, these fit our definition of the word, well, eyeglasses, 2 words. And so how do we know what they are, what type they are? Do we want to dig deeper? A child might see a set of glasses like this on a table and relate them only to what they've seen, which may be sunglasses. And so they put them on, and now their vision has changed because these are prescription reading glasses. They might be a little bit taken aback. That's not what they expected sunglasses to be. So having exposure to new, different, or novel ideas helps us to expand our understanding of the world. And that was pretty much Jean Piaget's approach to human development. And again, we'll go into more information about all of these theories as we get into the developmental life stages that they represent. Erik Erikson came up with this idea of psychosocial theory. And this is one of the theories that I really resonate with a lot. His approach was that human beings have different crises that they have to deal with per life stage to be able to successfully move on. And if they don't successfully accomplish or get through that crisis, then they're going to deal with that later on in life in different ways that are more appropriate to the life stage where they are now. So this might be most easily seen in terms of attachment. And so we'll also talk about attachment and John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth and attachment theory when we're talking about toddlers, especially coming up. But with attachment, if, according to Erik Erikson, if a child does not have a secure type attachment with a caregiver, can't count on that caregiver to be there for them, they don't successfully pass or complete the crises of attachment. And so this idea of not being able to trust people is part of this trust versus mistrust, one of the first stages in the psychosocial theory that Erikson proposed and has gotten some criticism, so bear that in mind too. But this trust versus mistrust with abandonment, attachment, being able to count on people to show up, to be able to provide food, comfort, um, all of the things that we need as human beings, it's going to be one of the first crises that we face as human beings. And how that crisis is resolved, successfully or not, is said to have some impact on how we deal with relationships going forward and throughout our lives. And so something that happens to us when we're 6 months old influences us when we're 60 or 96 years old. And so that range of impact is what Erikson really wanted us to be able to think about in terms of how we're raising children, how we're engaging with each other, and helping each other through these different crises and developmental life stages. Lawrence Kohlberg focused on morality and ethics as he was working on his ideas of lifespan development, human development. He focused mostly on young children and adolescents. And so one of the critiques of his theory of moral development is that it ended. It stops when you're about 14, 16, 18 years of age. And so it's a child theory, basically, um, but there's no growth after adolescence. And so that's one of the big critiques with his theory. Now, social learning theory is also very, very cool. This is Albert Bandura. You might remember Albert Bandura's experiments were with the Bobo doll. And if children watching adults hit the Bobo doll would also react in violent ways. And so are we mimicking what we're seeing? How are we interpreting what we're seeing and making that part of our own lives? A great example here from my own life is my father was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, the majority of his adult life. And I'm the oldest child. I have one sister who's 3 years younger than I. I have never smoked a cigarette in my life. My sister, on the other hand, not as big smoker, but she did smoke cigarettes for a little while and then decided that wasn't for her. But we see what's happening in our environment, and we can choose to do what's happening in our environment, be part of that culture, or we can choose to avoid it, make a 180 change, or of course somewhere in between. And we might come and go with what's happening in our culture. We might appreciate certain um, experiences, observations, traditions that we're seeing, and embody that. And there might be others that we're like, no, that's just not for us. Education can be part of this. What is What is the educational background of the people around us, and how is that influencing our decisions for education? Religion, political views can be wrapped up in this social learning theory idea. Lev Vygotsky is a very cool story. Lev Vygotsky really looked at the social collaboration and being able to support people in expanding their learning, and also a better understanding of where people are in their learning. A great example of this is when you're helping a child learn to tie their shoe. And we don't typically, and shouldn't, expect them to know how to tie their shoe from the very first try. So we break it down for them into smaller steps. We scaffold their learning. So two phrases that Lev Vygotsky was really known for is the zone of proximal development and scaffolding. And we will talk a lot more about this when we get into early childhood as well. This is a social learning, social role theory that I'm pretty fond of. Might also be because of his story. He was a Russian theorist, and a criticism of his theory is that it was never finished. He did not have the time in his lifetime to be able to study this the way that he and other researchers would have wanted to. Lev Vygotsky died at the age of 38 from tuberculosis. And so not a very long life to be able to research things, especially when it has to do with lifespan development. He didn't get to see his theory play out. Urie Bronfenbrenner, on the other hand, had a very, very long life and was able to detail and expand this ecological systems theory. And some researchers will call it, as you see on the screen, systems theory. Some researchers will call it ecological systems theory. And then other researchers will call it a bioecological systems theory. So you can see, just like the developmental stages, theories kind of get broken out and more specific as well. Bronfenbrenner also has a daughter who has continued his work. So this is an ever-evolving system. And chronosystem was added probably about 10-15 years ago to really talk about the influence of the historical time period that people are living in and how that influences their choices and their interactions and relationships with these other systems. The main thing to know about a systems theory is it's about that interrelationship between the individual who's at the core of this circle and how that person influences each system and how that system influences that person and the other systems around them. So it's really this dynamic relationship model that posits that something that happens at the federal government level influences the person this way, and this person can influence things that happen at the federal or even global government and historical time period in some way. So it's sometimes difficult to get people's minds wrapped around this systems theory, but in practice, it's pretty influential. I will tell you one critique of this is that it's so difficult to research. How do we measure? How do we classify? How do we observe all of these changes and the specific influences that they have on each system? It just seems like a very complicated system to study. And that is the biggest criticism of systems theory. We might see it in action, we might know it when we see it, but to have documented proof can be difficult. Research bias. Who are we studying? Who is studying the studied? How are we recruiting our participants? That is this idea of weird. And you might see it as you're reading different research articles. A lot of times research has been done on what's called a convenience sample. So who are the people that are in the universities that are participating in these studies? Who are we recruiting for these studies? And what does that have to say about the people who are not being included in these studies and why. As you've gone through with me with lots of these theorists, they're white European males, and that's been a problem with research too. We study who we have access to. I work at Plymouth State University. I'm up here in Thornton and Plymouth, and in New Hampshire, the majority of the population are white, Caucasian. And so if I wanted to do a research study that was representative of the United States demographics, it'd be very difficult for me to do that here. So I would need to be able to expand my research into other areas of the country to be able to get a more representative sample. And that's been a problem with research in many, many fields, including medical fields. So as we go through this course and as we're looking at research and resources, I'd like for you to have in the back of your head, who did this research? Who created this resource? What is their demographic background? And what does that have to do with how they conducted research or wrote their resource? And what's missing? Who is missing from this resource? So just have that thought in the back of your head. My goal for everybody that I encounter in my classes is to get them to think critically about what's happening and what's going on in the world. What's the why behind the what? So I hope we can get there. I'll point some things out as we go through the slides in the future. Please know that you can always reach out to me. Email is great at cpalmer@plymouth.edu, or you can email me through our Canvas page. That works too. I hope you have a great week. I look forward to reading more of your introductions, and I will see you on Canvas. Take good care.